This is a podcast which does not shy away from difficult and vulnerable topics, and we ask you to take care of yourselves when you listen. The content is of an adult nature, and we do swear at times.
Welcome to the Autistic Licence podcast. I'm Leo in London.
I'm Shauna, and I'm Carrickfergus in Northern Ireland.
We invite you to listen in on our conversations as we experiment with unmasking in an autistic space. We talk about what it means to discover we're autistic as adults, especially with established careers as therapists. We want people to know that autistic therapists exist and to broaden the conversation about neurodiversity. You're so welcome to join us, whoever you are and wherever in the world you are. We hope you'll find something of interest and connection here.
When I was first learning about my autism, as I was saying, I was comparing to my friends who also have ADHD, and you can't get away from looking up the symptoms of ADHD when you're looking up autism. You hear about it all the time. And reading about the symptoms of ADHD, they didn't ring true for me very much. Very few of them did. And when I took an ADHD test, I came out fairly low. And so one of the main parts of ADHD that didn't ring true for me was the executive function things that they were talking about, like not being able to perceive passage of time, for example. It's either now or it's later.
Yeah.
But there's no in between. Those are the only two understandings of time from within an ADHD
Isn't that me? Am I like that?
Are you like that? There's maybe. I don't think so, because my experience of you is that you, for different reasons, you don't plan in linear time, really.
No.
You do because of the thing about, I'll do this when I feel, me trying to get Shauna to tell me what she's up to in a day or a weekend or something. There might be specific things that she will know
I never
about.
tell you, though. It's like, this is what I'm doing now. This is what I did an hour ago. That's it. That's all I have.
Yes. And I don't know if that's a time perception thing or if it's a managing our version of PDA, for example, that things will happen when they happen, and planning is actually not helpful for a lot of that. So I don't know.
No, it's not. I think whenever Meaghan Ray just said that there, I thought that's another way that you could describe what I'm like. That's why I asked you. That's why I thought because I do fit that.
As soon as you have a schedule, it tells you what you're supposed to be doing in that moment, and you're like, no.
That's what I mean. So
that's the demand avoidance part, but I think there's an ADHD thing in whatever way, Meaghan Ray, that you just explained there, what you had looked up that you didn't identify with. I immediately said, that is. Yeah. Oh, I know what you said. You just said something.
But it sounds
present or later. That's all I can say. Present or
but it sounds like it may be part of your internal experience, just how you perceive time, but it could also be a coping strategy to manage PDA.
That's what I
think. That's right, and that's
right?
what Liam's saying, but I don't think it's just that. I think we always thought that.
Maybe both.
Now I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, no, that's me. Anyway, sorry, I interrupted there because I'm still intrigued about whether I'm ADHD or not. So my ears. Well, then you should have said yes, Shauna, that is you.
An influence, Leo. You didn't take the opportunity. Too autistic to go for it.
There, you didn't take it.
Too honestly autistic, or autistically honest, I should say. So yeah, I was hearing things about, like, I can't make myself do something unless I'm interested in it. I can't schedule things in order and then remember the order I'm supposed to do them in. Those types of things. I can't follow a set of instructions unless I have it to refer back to every time. None of those things apply to me. Yeah, you're both nodding along.
Yeah, no, it's me.
None of those things.
You're saying we didn't identify with that.
So, but when I was talking to this is why it's helpful to compare to other people, because I would see these symptoms talked about in the autistic community, because so many people are also ADHD, and I'd send them over to my friend Mika, and she'd be like, oh yeah, that's totally me. But that's not my autistic part of my brain. That's not my hardwiring. That's how I function in a day-to-day life. You know, I'm drawn to what's interesting, and I need variation and spontaneity. And I'm like, all of that just freaks my system out. I'm like, no. I want the schedule and I want the order. And if I have the schedule, I'm much more calm about it. And I can push back against the schedule. It still doesn't mean I want to start work right at 9 when I said I would. But having it there and knowing what I had planned to work on is calming for me rather than threatening. And so I have a whole bullet journal system of my schedule that I do weekly, monthly. I have quarterly reviews. I have quarterly goals, weekly tracking that I put in my goal sheet. That I actually developed while I was still a clinician in the hospital, to help me through burnout, like cycles of burnout that I was going through, which I perceived to be related to all those other aspects of who I am that I already knew would make that environment uncomfortable and challenging. So it wasn't surprising that I was getting burned out, but I developed this system and it's worked so well for me. I've kept it up, and now I know why it works for me, because I'm autistic, and it's great. But he likes all that. Cycle back to the executive function piece was that, bullet journal. Yeah, I have a homemade pocket on mine with all the things I need in it. So they're always there. It's very pretty. That's my calendar. It's my week and my notes.
It's for the listeners. There's now an exhibit going on bullet journals. And just for the listeners, I'm holding up my all that I use.
That's just because I just
and then I crumple them up and throw them out.
So I have notes for my candidacy writing attached to my computer right now that I just want to throw out. But I will take pictures of my goal sheets and goal tracking and send them to you in an email so you can see all of that, because I've taken years to we can have a whole nother conversation about bullet journaling and scheduling if you'd like. I'm not available. And so when I was figuring out my type of autism, I kept seeing these executive functioning challenges that people have and not identifying with them and being like, this is not an aspect of autism that I struggle with. I definitely struggle with the sensory overload and sensory processing. I definitely struggle with the energy levels and the social scripting and the bunch of autonomy, like threats to autonomy and justice and those types of things. Yeah. I have strong reactions to, the logical thinking, special interest, absolutely, yep. But not as intense as a lot of autistic people. I'm more cyclical and kind of, I don't have deep dives that really pull my attention away from other things too often. But I do. What is the other one? It's gone. But yeah, I was sure I didn't have a lot of the executive functioning related challenges that people talk about. And I think it's just because the majority of the ones I was hearing about were ADHD related.
Thank you.
And not autism related, because those really eclipse the autism experiences of executive functioning for ADHD people, because the ADHD component is so much stronger related to executive functioning, because that's a more experiential, like day-to-day applied component of the neurotype, right? Whereas for me, the part of executive functioning that I'm slowly learning I do struggle with is adapting on the fly. Mm-hmm. So like the having to change plans, multi-track processing. I am very monotrack, and when I have to take in multiple things at once, it's much harder. And there was I don't struggle with emotional regulation. That's not one that I don't have swings of emotion, or like my sister really did as a kid. And I learned from her experience what that looks like and how to work through that internally as it's happening. I developed a very comfortable in the moment processing of emotional experience because of I was the younger sibling, but I was helping her process her wild emotions because my parents were not comfortable with that and couldn't do it. So I became her support system for that, even though I was the younger one. And that was hugely beneficial for me. And I think that gave me the skills to manage the emotions that often come with autism. So I don't have that challenge either, really. Time management, not too bad, like scheduling, planning, all that kind of thing.
It's fascinating just to hear all the ways that you make sense of things. And I think that when you're sort of relatively newly identified and you're working with the language and you're saying, is this executive functioning and how does this fit? Every new person that I talk to that goes through that teaches me something else about how they read it and how they see it. Yeah. And I don't really read those criteria anymore. And I've obviously got a familiarity with some of the lingo, and I talk about it all the time with people in different ways, but don't always. Every time I hear someone like you put that through that and your new eyes and your very unique eyes, seeing it adds another level to my understanding of, is that executive functioning? Because if I'm really asked to define that, I would struggle to define that nowadays. When you just get so used to something, you think you know what it is, but you don't really, or you forget the things that you thought you knew. And so it's fascinating to hear that. And I'm also, you said that bit there about your sister and your role with her and her emotions. And I can see how that was also part of the building blocks of you then being able to contain your child's emotions. That he now, there's nothing that's too big for you. It's like you've seen it, you've done it. You were much younger, of course, definitely as an adult.
His emotions never felt threatening to me, but the sensory experience that I have as a parent being around him while he's high emotions, i.e. screaming, spontaneous movement, unpredictability, the unpredictability of his behavior when he's experiencing a strong emotion, that's the part that I find dysregulating and hard to manage, versus the emotion itself. The emotion is not threatening at all to me. I could easily help him through that once he's old enough to do a logical process, right? But when he's just loud and flailing and gonna be picking up something and throwing it, and I don't know what's gonna happen next, my internal system freaks out because of the unpredictable aspects of that, and the sensory overload of it. And that's the other part for me that I have struggled with the most in terms of figuring out about my autistic experience is looking up information on being a parent who is autistic.
There's very little out there.
There's almost nothing out there. Everything that I look up or hear people talk about with being a parent related to autism is always related to your child being autistic and how to be a good parent for an autistic child, and not about how to be an autistic parent of an autistic child, which I find hilarious because most parents of autistic children are autistic and they may or may not know it, and they would probably benefit from having this information for themselves as well. They probably don't realize why they're finding it so challenging to have an autistic child, which could easily be partly because of their lack of awareness of their own autistic traits. So
the complete and utter lack of, if we supported the parents, then we wouldn't have to intervene with the children. The parents are the ones that can do that.
Sensory management for me is a huge part of it, but I knew that going in. The part that I didn't, that was the part that was most obvious to me from a young age was sensory stuff.
I didn't know that, actually. I didn't know that going in.
Interesting.
Yeah, I did not know that would get me so much. And I didn't have for so many of us who haven't had the benefit of having that as children, then we have to somehow find it within ourselves to give to the child what we haven't had. And I think the only way that I could do that was because of my therapy training and my training in attachment and in following the child's lead, all the things you talked about earlier. I was able to apply all of that. I didn't have the books, the parenting books obviously didn't work, and the professional people were telling me, I just wasn't cut out to do it. But I had a strong belief that this was a human being and I had to follow her leading wherever that would take. But I also think that because I didn't have the support, there was no boundaries around that. So I actually overgave. And in overgiving, then there was years of needing to tend to myself after that. But I see that, in the whole big scheme of things, the child needs the input when the child is a child, when they're an infant, the first 1,000 days and all that. So that needed to be done. But actually, I would have needed lots of aftercare if I didn't get it at the time, but that isn't available because nobody is providing that. And the whole sensory profiling, like if we just demystified that and said that does not make you a bad parent because that shrieking is going right through you, that makes you so what can you do? Wear the headphones, even now. So like my daughter talks very, very loudly, and she is she dances and, like there's just a lot of noise that goes on whenever she's around. She doesn't walk quietly. She slams doors. Once I learned that I had a responsibility that I could accommodate as well. We could both accommodate. And I still think it's appropriate, especially as she gets older, that she learns to accommodate to me because it can't always be one way. Obviously, when she was little, I just put up with it. I didn't know how to look after myself, so I just put up with it. And now there needs to be more give and take as they get older. And it's what can I do and what can you do? And maybe that could have been started younger. I don't know. But if there was some kind of somebody talking about this and depathologizing the whole thing, it doesn't make you a bad parent. Doesn't make your kid too loud. It's just that the mixture of that is not working.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like I agree with all of that, and identify with a lot of it. I think I went into the experience with more information than you had for sure in terms of like what to expect. Yes, with my own kid, what to expect as a new parent in the first year, what to expect, and there's just so much more information around on social media, and I was able to curate my feed of information to just accounts that were giving me positive information and stuff that I believed in and could follow, and was useful, and not, moms need to be perfect and giving everything they have and, all that kind of thing. Like I avoided all of that and looked for information of how to take care of yourself while you're taking care of your kid and stuff like that. And it was I ended up with much more balanced information, I think. But going into the parenting experience, I knew I would struggle with the sensory stuff. But the part that I knew I would struggle with most was behavioral stuff, boundaries, maintaining boundaries, unpredictability, and that mostly comes with toddler ages rather than, and like, so like 1 to 4, 1 to 5 is like peak time for that sort of thing. And so the first year I knew would not be nearly as much of a challenge for me as most people, because I would be isolated at home where I like to be isolated. I would not have to go to work because we have a year of paid parental leave in Canada.
Really good.
Yeah, you get 50% of your income, which isn't like, it's not awesome, but it's significantly better than the majority.
It gives you the choice, doesn't it? you could choose to do that. Yeah.
It was enough for us, and we could plan for it. So even though that happened to fall right at COVID, and I was extra isolated in the middle of a very, very cold winter where I couldn't go go outside because my kid was too young for that coldness, and I couldn't go to indoor spaces either because of COVID. Everything was shut down. So I literally was isolated in my house for months. So that was harder than I expected it to be because of that, but it wasn't as hard as most people would have experienced it. Because I'm comfortable being in a little cocoon, and that's fine. And the newborn phase and the first year even is on a predictable schedule. Mm-hmm. Every 4 hours, the same things happen, and then that 4-hour cycle slowly lengthens.
In my life, that's not what happened here.
Yeah, and not everyone gets that. I got that. My kid was
not everybody
structured, very cyclical, slept really well. I had an easy young kiddo. Mm-hmm. And so my first year of parenting was easier. And I knew that going forward after that, when I was returning to the world and having to navigate my work life and the demands of that and being out in the world and being fatigued from that and then coming home and doing parenting, that was going to be more challenging, especially as my kid got older and got louder and got more chaotic and got more behavioral and whatever. Just all of the things get bigger and bigger as they go up through toddler.
He had his first year in seclusion and isolation, so he was not exposed to that stuff until his second year of life, which is bound to have affected all of the ones in that.
Yeah, and we very consciously decided to put him in full-time daycare right at year one because we wanted to make sure he got as much socialization as he could as quickly, as early as possible. And there would be no way for us to match the level of socialization he would get in full-time daycare if we had him at home or even in part-time. So we did that consciously and found a good daycare that were comfortable with and recognized our family structure and terminology and whatever. Yeah. So in terms of parenting, for me, it has gotten harder over the years rather than easier. And I knew that would happen though, just from knowing myself before I knew I was autistic. And now I know why. And I can have much better strategies for managing it on a day-to-day, minute-to-minute level. And I'm still working on that because the sensory stuff is fairly easy to manage. It's concrete. I can adapt my sensory dampening to the different senses. I can remove myself if I need to. The part for me that is hardest to manage is the executive function demand of getting myself and my kid ready and out the door and to where we need to go and back and make sure we have everything we need and manage while we're out and come back all in one piece. So that part of it, I'm still trying to figure out. The adulting, being an adult, just adulting is that part of it. And then the other part of it is the autonomy demand of a kid. As soon as I am parenting, my time is not my own. If he needs something, we can negotiate. If I'm in the middle of something, he can wait for a few minutes, but I have to make sure I feed him at the right time. I have to make sure I get him to bed at an appropriate time. I have to make sure he doesn't watch TV all evening because that's just terrible for his system. It's not going to be good for either of us. I have to make sure I hold those boundaries consistently of whatever it is that we've set in our family. And so the autonomy demand is something I didn't recognize or predict. And that's more similar to a PDA experience, I think. I don't have the nervous system, like sudden response to a demand. I don't have a threat response to a demand, but I do have a low-grade chronic stress on my system of the autonomy demand associated, especially with parenting. And that's one of the things, I think, one of the ways that I coped with that is a maladaptive coping strategy is staying up late after he goes to bed. Right? I take my time back. I now have my time to myself.
Is it also,
and then you end up sleep deprived and it's terrible because you can't function any better the next day. So it's not a good strategy. It's really not. But until I realized that...
Can I check as well? The flexibility. It's not... It is about his autonomy and his drive for autonomy. But there's also a demand on you for a flexibility that can be hard. It's like the transition thing, or just a flexibility of I thought this was happening and now I might have to ramp up and do something else. It's also flexibility in your nervous system. So there's a few things there.
Yes. And transition, not having access to the transition time that I need because there's the external demand for it is where that chronic stress on my system comes from, I think, because I have that monotrack processing. So if he demands that I switch tracks and I have to do that quickly for whatever, quicker than I'm comfortable with for whatever reason, that extra effort required to shove my train over onto the other track takes it out of my system, and I need to get that back somehow. And just sleeping doesn't do it.
No. Well, you might be able, you can't just click your fingers and go to sleep anyway, probably, even if you want to.
I'm not bad at that.
You can do that.
Yeah. Not that quickly, but yeah. I read before I go to sleep every night, and I've never had insomnia. I've never had sleep issues. Again, probably related to the secure childhood and no history of trauma.
Must have given you what you needed in those early days in terms of sleep. And I always say that's why my daughter didn't sleep till she was 7. And my argument was always like, I'm going to invest now because she's got another 70, 80 years after that. And everybody said, she'll never be out of your bed. She'll never sleep if you keep. And it's not true. If you invest for as long as they need you to invest, she's a great sleeper. She's got no issues with, sleeping or waking or anything like that. But as a baby, you would have thought, that's just a child that doesn't know how to sleep, and you discipline and she's always going to have sleep problems. She's just hyperactive, whatever. It's not true. They just need whatever intense, they ask for what they need. And when they've got what they need, even if it takes 7 years, then that's it done. And and I think you must have got what you needed, and then later on you don't have the repercussions of that.
Because PDA is something that I had, obviously you come across it when you're learning about autism. It's talked about everywhere. And it was not, I didn't really resonate with it, but I did to some, like this small amount of it. I was like, yes, I can understand where that comes from. And I definitely have that sometimes, but it's at the end of the day, if I haven't had enough autonomous time in the day, then I have resistance to giving up my time to go to sleep. That's when I experience it the most. And so I knew I had that because I've experienced that before. Like when going to school and you have an exam period and you have to be studying or else you're going to fail your exams. So you're going to study and write your exam and study for the next one, write your exam and study for the next one and write your exam. And it's a whole week or 2 weeks of no time to yourself to do anything else that you want to do.
Yes.
At the end of that, I play video games and don't come out of my room for days. Like, don't talk to me. I'm going to be staring at my phone or my screen and sleeping, and that's it. Like, don't talk to me. So, and it's similar to autistic burnout, but it's very specific cause. Yes. It's not pervasive. It's just caused by that autonomy demand building up over time and not being able to get it back, not being able to have enough autonomous time to even it out. But it didn't feel the same as PDA. Yeah. And when you were talking about autistic demand avoidance, I was like, that is what it sounds like to me.
That's great. What I suppose what I'm just want to reflect is how struck I am by you, Meaghan Ray, in your, see, there's going to be no neat words for this. They're all going to be slightly wrong. But there's such a soft, warm, very strong self-confidence. And I think that the upbringing that you've described is really unusual. Also, all of those strands of your identity, which you also kind of just hold so, it's not confident, it's not quite the right word, but confidently, it's just a very solid
and robust, isn't it?
Robust as well, but these are all kind of strength words, and I'm receiving something that's also just very, very humane and warm about how you hold all of that. But also the other interesting thing I think, which is quite unusual, is from the parental point of view, is that the classic late diagnosed autistic adult is because their child has been diagnosed, and then they start going, oh, hang on a minute. And here that's not been the case. It might well be, who knows, the other way around. You don't know yet for sure, but you've got some suspicions. And all of those things just seem to have given you some really unique experiences of a lot of the aspects of autism that we talk about all the time. And it's just, it's really joyful. And like I said at the beginning, how do I bottle all of that and just disperse it? That is not to discount discomfort or you do know what I mean? I'm not saying, how lucky old you've had such a smooth ride of it.
No, I think
far from it, but there's a lot of uniqueness about your experience. I'm so grateful that we get to share it.
I think in picture metaphor. So
Lovely,
if I can provide you with a useful picture that comes to mind when you were saying that, is one of my crafts that I enjoy is chainmail, making chainmail.
Wow. Yeah, no, I know it. Yeah, sorry, we're going to show us something.
Yeah, let me go grab, because my favorite fidget and stim toy is a chainmail circlet. Let me go grab it and I'll show you.
Please.
Meaghan Ray now goes and gets their favourite fidget, and obviously this bit's a bit visual, so we do have a video to show you this part, and the link for that is in the description, so check that out and then come back and join us again.
You were saying something about
I was talking about
the visual.
Yes.
So this is the visual.
Yes.
For what we were saying about the inside.
Of the different parts of who I am.
Yeah.
And so like the way that the different parts of who you are each a single ring, but they're not super strong on their own. But if you link them all together, the more they're lying in a way that is flat and comfortable and in harmony with each other, the more comfortable the overall thing is. Then it's more than the sum of its parts, right? Whereas
I love that.
And also that's what's behind the whole diversity, whether it's neurodiversity or biodiversity paradigms, isn't it? That, the strength is through the numbers of differences.
Yeah. And I think the other part of what you were saying, Leo, was how I've built that for myself and explored that within myself. And for me, the awareness of that and the conscious process is obviously partly because I'm autistic and I have that natural introspection and deep dive into my personhood, but it comes from being queer as well, because as a queer person, regardless of sexual or gender, doesn't matter, you have to, it's an active self-definition process. You rarely do people automatically know who they are and are taught who they are from a young age. We're not exposed to that. It's not in our language. You have to figure that out. There's a figuring out process where all of a sudden that dissonance with who you've been told or are living as and who you know who you are is something's not meshing there. You have to figure out what that is. You have to find the language for it. You have to explore what that means in your day-to-day life. That whole queer identity discovery process is exactly the same steps as any part of your identity. So becoming a parent is also the same, like the experience of becoming a parent is a physiological experience for me as a pregnant person, birthing parent, but there's still the identity aspects of being a parent that many people do not explore. They just fall into it by accident over time. It's put on them because they end up with a child, right? But if as a queer person talking to other queer parents, the process of becoming a parent for queer people is much more active and involved in terms of identity formation and identity shifting and identity kind of melding with who you were before, who you are now, what that means, how that fits with the other parts of your identity, because we're used to that process of identity development from being queer already. And it's just normal for us. And so this was like being autistic and figuring it out. I'm autistic is the fourth major time I've done that in my life, probably more than that, because there's also student and professional and other types of identity that also shift over time. But in terms of being queer, being non-binary, being a parent, and then being autistic, the exploration process and integration with the rest of who I am, that's a normal process for me now. That process of doing that is comfortable for me and fun.
Yes. And is that the true meaning of queering? As you know, so
absolutely.
You have quered so many aspects, you know, it's just a way of being. So you queered your gender, you know, and then even when you went into your career, you found
absolutely
to queer that, if you like, into the way that worked for you. And so of course it's going to be natural when I'm a parent, I'm going to do that same process. How does this work for me? And then your autism, you also queer your autism in a sense that you're not just going, oh yeah, I'll just take what it says in the book that means that I'm autistic. I'm going to do it my way, because it's literally a way of being for you. Before, you didn't need to learn that academically. I think I've learned it academically, you know, and so I'm coming the other way around, and you know, then making sense in retrospect. But actually, you've had to live this, you know, because you didn't have the privilege of having like a cisgender person, like you just have it mirrored back. So you haven't had to think about this until you make yourself think about this. But it's just a way of being for you. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah.
We have talked and talked and talked, and it's nearly 10 o'clock at night.
You're a record breaker, Meaghan Ray.
You are.
I usually am. I love talking, and you guys are great. I also have a meeting coming up in 10 minutes because it's only 3 in the afternoon. It's only 3 in the afternoon for me. So,
is there anything, any parting comments or gifts that you'd like to give our listeners?
I don't think so. I do want to plug my research if I can.
Go for it.
My research that I do is about chest binding, which is like chest compression for transmasculine people. And I put my research results out on Instagram at chest_binding_support.
We'll type that on.
Put an actual
perfect.
Yeah, as well.
Great.
Yeah.
So people can definitely find my chest binding information there. My research is also linked there, and tons of trans health resources. Links to other resources are there. People can message me through that account if they want more information on any of that stuff, or if they want to connect professionally. I also would love to connect with anyone who is an autistic person who is parenting, especially young kiddos. If they want to, you know, create a chat somewhere on Signal or something and want to chat about that, anyone who wants to do that can reach out to me. You can message me through my chest binding account, and then once I see who you are, if I'm comfortable with you know, having you join my personal Instagram account, then I'll give that to you. So we'll just leave it as that one that people can contact me through. I get too many emails on a daily basis anyway, so I don't want more emails coming into my inbox. But yeah, I think that's it.
Well, thank you for making that invitation as well. And you know, that's
generous. To our listeners, you know, I said to you, I don't know why I used that word, you know, and I was really just meaning like a gift, a pearl of wisdom. But just whenever you said that is a gift, you know, what you've just offered there, and the resource that you're making available. Thank you so much, because we haven't had anything like this offer made before of people who are specifically interested in, you know, both the neurodivergent parenting actually, as well as the chest binding and related resources. So thank you so much for raising awareness of what you do in that way. And thank you.
Thanks for getting the word out. I don't have a platform like you guys do, so that's great.
Thank you so much, Meaghan Ray. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Cheers.
Thanks, Leo.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Autistic License podcast. You can connect with us via Instagram, Facebook, YouTube at autisticlicense.com, or by email at autisticlicense@gmail.com. We spell license LICENCE. We also have a Facebook community. You can search for Autistic License Siana and Leo. Siana spelled SIANA, or you can click on the link in the show notes.